Hello, this is Module 5, Introduction to the Dewey Decimal Classification and Call Numbers. First of all, let's try to do some definition work. Classification, what is classification? Classification is the process of describing items in a catalog using a classification system such as the Library of Congress or the Dewey Decimal Classification. This course will focus on the Dewey Decimal Classification System because this is the system that is used in most schools and public libraries. Items in a library are not classified per se by subject. They are actually classified by discipline. And the Dewey Decimal Classification divides knowledge into 10 main classes, which is then subdivided into subclasses for each discipline. When you look around the library, particularly in school libraries that are one room, you will see how this classification system works. Typically, you start with philosophy and religion, and then you move from left to right into the history area, and then into the science area, and then into literature, and then sports and recreation. And the division of knowledge into these classes really represents a Western bias. It really represents the way that we have divided knowledge up into different categories, such as philosophy, science, social science. When we do classification and when we use classification systems, what we are doing is serving Cutter's location function of the catalog by assigning each item with a unique classification and item number. Classifying items by assigning them a classification number in a library allows somebody to look up a title by subject area and then being able to go to a specific place on the library shelf and find that item as well as related items on the same shelf. Libraries use classification systems to arrange books on the shelf by discipline. And so this is called co-location. It allows the user to find similar items together on the shelf. And each item has a unique call number that distinguishes it from other items in that class. And we will talk a little about call numbers a little bit later. But basically, call numbers are a combination of the classification number, the Dewey Decimal in the case of school and public libraries, a Cutter number, which is comprised of the author's last name and a code, and a 3 or 4 number code, a work mark, which is related to the title of the book, and the publication date. Now, there's a lot of variation in how call numbers in libraries are created. Typically, school and public libraries follow the following conventions. Fiction is organized alphabetically by author in a separate section called fiction. Nonfiction is organized by Dewey Decimal Classification, and biography is sometimes separated from nonfiction and uses a B call number in a separate section organized alphabetically by the famous person's last name. Otherwise, it's in the 920 section of the Dewey classification, or it's also in the content area for which that person is known. Typically, if there is a call number system in place, libraries typically follow that system unless there's some compelling reason not to do that. So we have the Dewey Decimal Classification System, which is a 3-digit numbering system of decimals. There are 10 subject classes, each of which have 10 divisions. And as I've said before, these are commonly used in school and public libraries because this system is more a general system and easy to use. We will be looking at the summaries document in a little bit. Examples of a Dewey Decimal classification is 398, that's I think social sciences, 917, 975, 940, Uh, you'll see oftentimes on Dewey classifications when you're looking at MARC records that you'll see apostrophes or backslashes. These are symbols that let librarians know that number can be truncated. So for example, the number we have here, 025.30973, you see the apostrophe behind the 3. That means that you can truncate that number to 025.3. Now, the Library of Congress classification system that you might have used in college uses letters and numbers, and it has many, many more classes and divisions. And that's because academic libraries are typically large and have a more diverse collection. Now, let's take a look at the Dewey Summary Tables. You can find the Dewey Summary Tables in the External Links area of Blackboard. And if you scroll down, you'll see Dewey Summaries, and you can open it up. And you see that there's a brief introduction that I encourage you to read about the notation and the hierarchy. And then actually the Dewey classification is a multi-volume set of reference tools, but we were just looking at the summary tables here, and it shows the 10 main classes, and you see 000, computer science information and general works. Typically, library science books are found in the 025 section. The 100s, philosophy and psychology. 200s are religion. 300 is social science. 400 is language. 500 is science. 600 is technology. 700 is arts and recreation. 800 is literature. 900 is history and geography. And for each of these classes are then divisions. So, for example, in the hundreds division, you have 100 is philosophy, 160 is logic, 170 is ethics, and so on, for each of the classes. And then you have even more specific divisions, and they call this the thousands. So, for example, in the hundreds division, we have for 160 is logic, 161 is induction, 162 is deduction. So it keeps becoming more and more specific. So when you're first deciding what classification your item would be in, it's a good idea to start to browse the summary tables and try to find the specific Dewey classification that best fits your item. So, for example, if you have a book on the history of Africa, there's 960, history of Africa, but also 966, West Africa and offshore islands. It allows you to become increasingly more specific about your classification. And it's a very good starting place to understand how the Dewey classification is organized. Now, the other part of a call number after the classification is a cutter number. And the cutter number is a letter and numbering system based on the author's last name or the title of the work if there is no author. And it is used to give books with the same titles unique call numbers and places on the shelves, and they'll be placed together at the shelf. And the cutter number is placed after the Dewey or LOC classification, and there's an example here. The B3554 is a cutter number from the Cutter Sanborn for figure table from OCLC. So, let's take a look at where you can find the cutter number. You can download the cutter number from the external links area. You can see down here download this program and install it on your computer. When you get the cutter number, what you will see here is a very simple program, and this does not work on Mac computers, so you'll have to find a PC that you can use it with. But notice here that I have selected the Cutter Sanborn for figure table. What we will be using in this class is the Cutter Sanborn for figure table. And I'm repeating this because students often forget to select the Cutter Sanborn for figure table, so I'm showing it to you right here. And so if you have an author last name such as Smith, you type the author's last name in there, and you see that the cutter number is S6421, and you can actually just copy that and paste it into your work form. Now, if you were doing a cutter from the title of the book because there was no author, then you would type in the first significant word in the title. And so for an example, it's history here, and the cutter number is H67357 for history. Okay, let's say the title of the book is Introduction. Well, you have a cutter number of I61962. So that is what a cutter number is, how it works, and where you can find the automatic cutter program for class. And please remember that we are using the Cutter Sanborn for figure table. Now, here again is the Dewey Decimal classification ordered from the 000 to the 900 section. And as I said before, each main class is divided into increasingly narrower classes. So, when you are assigning a class to an item, what you are doing is assigning a class based on its intellectual content. Also, classification is based on a tradition of where items have been placed in the libraries in the past. So, for example, books on the events before and after the atomic bomb blast in Hiroshima, Japan, are actually in 940 History of Europe because all items related to World War II are actually classed here. And then as another example, there's books on events before and during the Trail of Tears, marches in 975 History of the Southeastern United States, because there is no Dewey classification for Native American history. This is an example. Both of these are an example of the Western bias that is inherent in our Dewey classification systems. Typically, in large libraries, specialists in these subject areas make decisions about classification because this is sometimes a complicated process using the Dewey tables. But for beginners, this is really a hit and miss process. What you must do is first determine the subject heading of the item from the Sears list, because the Sears list has actually assigned Dewey classifications based on the Sears subject heading, so it makes our work a lot easier. So we go to Sears, we think about what is the appropriate subject heading for the item. Then we review the Dewey Decimal class that Sears lists in order to verify that our item actually belongs there. So we look it up in Sears first, we find the Dewey class, then we go to the Dewey summaries to see if that's a really good fit for our item. And then other places you can go to verify the class is other library catalogs such as OhioLink. You can look and see if similar items are classed there. What is used in public and school libraries is the abridged Dewey Decimal classification, and I think we're in the 21st edition of the Dewey classification, the abridged version. The larger libraries will use the full version of the Dewey Decimal classification. So sometimes if you see on your MARC record a 21 on the right side of the Dewey classification, that means that it's the 21st version of the abridged Dewey classification that was used to create that Dewey classification. So when we're building call numbers, what we're doing is compiling all of this information. And each item in a library is assigned a unique number called a call number. It's comprised of a Dewey Decimal Classification, a cutter number, a work mark, and a date. And these elements combined will guarantee that no item in the library will have the same number and that like items will be grouped together. And also within like items, if an author has written more than one book in that subject area, it will also be grouped by author. So typically items ordered from vendors will have a classification and cutter number and date if you request it. And remember, the symbol such as the slash or the apostrophe means that is where you can truncate the classification to make it a simpler number. If a library has a different call number than the convention that we're using in this class, it doesn't mean that their system is wrong. Every library you visit will probably have a slightly different system because it depends on how the system started and also what is best for that library. However, all will use the Library of Congress or Dewey Decimal Classification for nonfiction. Academic libraries typically use Library of Congress. Public and school libraries typically use Dewey. And so for fiction, reference, and biography, there may be some differences. Typically, you use the conventions that have already been used in the library. Vendors like Follett often provide options for what kind of classification you want to use for your items. And you can find an example of this in the external links area. Here's the Follett book processing form that I can show you. And every vendor has something like this. So when you order your records, this is the information that you fill out. Here's the information for book processing and cataloging, where you want your barcode to start, payment methods, invoicing methods, how you want your processing to come to you. Do you want it to everything Mylar on books with dust jackets, the cost for that, automation processing plus cards, there's a price for that, do-it-yourself kits, there's a price for that. So depending on your budget, you can decide what you want. And then standard individual items, electronic catalog records are 11 cents per book. Well worth the money. You can also have the Lexile label attached, barcodes, all kinds of things to reduce your time spent processing. And then information for accelerated reader or reading counts, how you want your label to be. And then also, here is the data for the electronic records. What do you want? Do you want Windows, Mac version? Do you want Follett Destiny, Cert Plus? What format? Mark 21 or Microlift? And then do you want to receive your records via tidal wave, which is a very useful tool provided by Follett? Information about the barcodes, personalized pockets, and then cataloging specifications. You can leave your specifications uploaded to Follett, or you can select different specifications below. For example, Library of Congress or Sears. How do you want your fiction? FIC, the first three letters of the author's surname, a number of different choices. Nonfiction, you want classification number with the author's surname, classification number only. Where do you want your biographies? Do you want it in the 920s? Do you want it in the biography section? How do you want that? And then collective biography the same way. Do you want an easy fiction section with an E on there? What kind of special classification options? J for K through 8, E for easy nonfiction. What about the short stories? Where do they go? In the 800 section of Dewey or in a separate section called SC? Foreign language options. Where do you want to put your books in languages other than English? Do you want it assigned by subject or do you want to assign it by language? Reference. Do you want reference assigned by classification or R for a special section? And then the professional section, where do you want that? So you have a lot of decisions to make when you're cataloging. It's very important to, first of all, consider what the school has used in the past, and then also make your decision based on professional standards. So, for example, in a school library, and what we will be doing in this class is classify fiction using a fiction designation and the author's surname. So, for example, fiction will be FIC or F and the author's last name and then the date. If you're doing biography, it is by B for biography, and then the biography's name, the person that the book is about, and then the date. So B, Obama, 1995. A book about Michael Jordan is B, Jordan, 2003. And then nonfiction. This is a more complicated process and will take a number of different tools. So, for example, if we were going to build a call number for the history of Africa after 1885 by John Smith, the first thing that we would do would be go to Sears in Wilson Web and then look for an appropriate Sears heading. So let's do that. And we'll type in Africa. Have to go back. Sears. Browse. Africa. Okay, I see that we have Africa history, and what we're looking for is history of Africa after 1885 to 1948. So, it looks like it's going to be Africa history. and that's in the 960s for the Dewey class. And so then we will go to the Dewey summary tables, and see what Dewey has to say. Okay, we have history of Africa, so that looks right. Okay, and then we add a, so what we have is Africa -- history, and then we have added a chronological subheading. And where you find those subheadings are in the front matter. At the last page of the front matter is a list of subdivisions provided in the Sears list. So if we look, we will see that history is a subdivision that we can use. So we have Africa -- history, and then we added a chronological subject heading for the 19th century. So that's how we came up with this particular subject heading: Africa -- history -- 19th century, with a DDC of 960. Now the author is Smith, and so what we need to do is go to our cutter program and type in Smith to get our cutter, and it's S6421. And we see that, yes, that's the correct cutter. Remember, we're using the Cutter Sanborn 4-figure table. Then for the work mark, we get the work mark for the first significant word in the title, and we see that it's H for history, with the date 2007. So it's 960 S6421H 2007. So this is what you would find in a large public library. This is what we're going to do in this class. But if you were in a smaller library, you could just do 960 SMI or SMITH. But this is what we're going to do in class to get some practice. Now here's another example. Computer applications in the arts, written by Jane Doe. The first thing we would do is go to Sears. And do another browse. And let's browse in arts. Okay. We have graphic arts. Let's just try art. Okay. Not really exactly finding what we're looking for, so let's look at computers. Still not finding it. Let's look at computer. Okay, and then we see a subject heading called Computer Art. and we go to that subject heading and we check the Dewey. And we see that there's a couple of different ones we can use. So we're going to look in the summary tables to figure out which one we want. It's 700, 760, or 776. So 700, no, is the arts, fine, and decorative. 760 is graphic arts, making, and prints. Or 776, computer art, digital art. That's what we want. So we know it's 776. And then for the cutter number, it is Jane Doe. So we go to our cutter program. And we type in DOE, and so that's D649. So we have, and then the work mark is from the title, which is Computer Art, and the date is 2002. So we have a call number of 776 D649C 2002 for a large public library, 776 DOE for a small public library. For our class, what we're going to be doing is the larger call numbers to get practice. So we will be getting some practice on doing classification and developing call numbers in this module. There's lots of resources that we've looked at, including the Sears list, the Sears front matter, the Dewey summaries table, and also we've looked at Wilson Webb, the Sears list from Sears. So all these tools together, we will start building call numbers during this module. And please, if you have questions, post them to the discussion board.